Ever wondered how to stay on top of your project costs and avoid end-of-job surprises? Well, let me show you how with Wunderbuild's forecast cost to complete feature, which gives you clarity like never before. So in this video, you're going to learn how to use Wunderbuild's forecast cost to complete tool to predict your project's final costs and margins with confidence. So whether you're managing a fixed price or cost plus contract, I'm going to show you how FTC helps for you to track actuals, committed costs and forecasted spend in real time. Plus, I'm going to show you powerful features like the category level and item level forecasting, which is perfect for reporting back to clients and keeping a close eye on your gross profit margin and target throughout the project. Hey, real quick, I'm Theo Manifavas. I'm a former builder. I've managed hundreds of projects and now I run Consistemize, where I help builders set up Wunderbuild and their business systems. So by the end of this video, you're going to know how to access and navigate the forecast cost to complete screen in Wunderbuild, how to forecast costs at both the category and line item levels, and also how to use tools like mark as fully committed and mark as complete effectively, all of which is going to help you keep your margins in check and also avoid those nasty surprises at handover when you're trying to report back to the client on where their project is at specifically from a financial point of view. So let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about forecast cost to complete and how it works in Wunderbuild. So I'll go over what exactly is forecast cost to complete, or FTC for short, in a moment. But for those of you who aren't aware, just find this example. So when we're within a job and we go to the costing section here of the job, what you can do is you can click this icon here and it'll show up as forecast, and this is how you can see forecast cost to complete of a project. So yeah, just look out for these buttons at the top here if you're not already aware, and this is where you can get other cost information as well, like cost code info in terms of budget versus actual, and also against the cost categories as well, and against the allowances also, if you had any allowances on a project. So yeah, just for those of you who aren't aware, this is where we access all our cost reporting and analysis features in the software, and this one here is the forecast one. But let's take a step back, and before we understand or try to explain what forecast cost to complete is, for those of you who aren't aware, I just want to go back to a more basic level or a simple level so we can see our gross profit is calculated and in turn our gross profit margin on a project. So I've got this simple estimate here, and you can see we've got a total budget or subtotal as it's shown here of 146,500, 20% markup of 29,300, and this gives us our total here of 175,800 ex GST. So this is pretty normal in terms of how we come to a quote price or a contract price when we're pricing a job, where we put in all our costs to get our budget and we add our markup, and that's how we get our total price. So in a perfect world, I want to show you, so let's just say we won this job, and we won the project, I should say, and we converted to a job in Wunderbuild. So this is just like a perfect world example here where, again, this is our budget, 146,500. You can see actual cost here in this example is also 146,500. And obviously we've claimed the total contract amount of this 175,800, and it gives us this gross profit of 29,300 and a margin of 16.67% based on that 20% markup. And I've done another video online if you want to see how we work out markup versus margin and vice versa, margin versus markup. So hence why we've got the difference here. So I won't go through that now, but I just want to point out that this is perfect world where what we said we were going to spend in terms of the budget we spent. So this 146,500, this budget amount, and then here under this claimed amount, we obviously claimed what the contract value is, so that shouldn't change too much, but it's more this gross profit here of this 29,300 matching exactly what we'd estimated at the quote stage, and everything working out as we thought. So I mean, this can happen, give or take, with a slight variance, but all in all, usually we're building a project and we see it through, we're going to have cost overruns, cost savings, and it's going to be a few swings and roundabouts to get to that final gross profit that we're aiming for. And a lot of the time we won't actually achieve the gross profit that we were aiming for, And what's even worse is not knowing where we're sort of headed. So, and this is where the forecast cost to complete really comes in handy. So just to hit home on that, on what I was saying there of, not knowing, if I show you in this example here, it's the same project, and this time we're running the project, let's just say we're 1/4 or 1/5 of the way through, and we've spent 45,000. You can see that here as actual cost, and we've got a claimed amount of 30 grand. So we've only built 30 grand. And then you can see here that the gross profit is showing this negative 15 grand, being the difference between actual versus claimed, a gross margin of negative 50%. So obviously, it's not correct, because this might have been that we've only billed a deposit or whatever. We may have only billed for the first stage and we haven't yet billed for the second stage, but we've incurred more costs. So this snapshot here in this overview screen isn't reflective, and if we're just looking at this, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to be able to look forward and see exactly, well, where are we headed? Like, where is this project really headed from a cost perspective, to understand what our final true profit, gross profit and gross margin will be. So again, this is now where we can use that forecast cost to complete feature and area in Wunderbuild to determine what our gross profit and gross margin will be. So I'll go back to these slides and I'll open this one. What is forecast cost to complete? So forecast cost to complete, or FTC for short, it provides a live snapshot of what you've spent, so the actual cost, what you've committed to spend, which in Wunderbuild is noted as committed cost, and then what you're forecasting to still spend, which is noted as other committed cost in Wunderbuild. So what this does is, when we enter this information into the FTC area, it updates the gross profit and the gross margin in real time. So this is the key here. Whereas before, in this example, we're only updating actual cost in real time. We're not able to know what any committed costs are from looking at it from this point of view. So this isn't reflective of what the true gross profit as a number and margin is. And then what it also does in terms of giving us a live snapshot, it provides a forecast budget variance. So this is particularly useful for cost plus projects where you need to report back to the client. It could be weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, and you need to give them a good idea for your cost categories and cost line items which you're billing for, where exactly you're at, whether you've made a saving, whether you're under budget, and you're able to provide them a proper update on exactly what you've spent and what you're committing to spend, so they can understand what their final cost will be for the project, and it's just not all a surprise at the end. So this is really important, and again, this is really useful for cost plus projects. And just on this gross margin notation here, where I've got this asterisk, gross margin is only updated for fixed price contracts, as markup margin is fixed for cost plus. So what that means is that in this forecast gross margin, this doesn't change when you've got the project set up as a cost plus job. And the reason that is because for a cost plus job, that markup or margin percentage should be fixed. So regardless of where the project ends, dollar-wise, that margin shouldn't change, because you've obviously agreed to a margin with the client from the outset. So just something to be aware of, because that threw me out a bit the first time I was looking at it as well, where I had this project set up as a cost plus project, and then I was trying to understand why this forecast gross margin figure wasn't changing when I was changing figures in my committed costs here. And that's the reason why. So just something to note, if you're playing with the forecast cost to complete, if it's set as a cost plus project, this forecast gross margin won't change. All right, so with that said, let's look at a couple of examples. So the first example I'm going to look at is forecasting at the cost category level. And whether we're forecasting at the cost category level or the cost line item level, which I'll go through in the second example, we've got these two features where we can forecast using the fully committed feature, or we can use the mark as complete feature, and I'll go through both. I think it's this one here. So yeah, let's look at this example. So So again, I'm in the forecast cost to complete view here in Wunderbuild, and it's the same project that I've been referencing in these previous examples. And what I'll do now is I'll show you how exactly we can forecast on the project, and to be able to then report back on it, and obviously as the builder as well, understand where we're at. So let's look at this one here. We've got prelims here, and you can see the budget for prelims was 25k. We've spent 11k as an actual cost. We've committed 12k. So when we say committed, it's sending out purchase orders or a single purchase order for 12k. So as it stands at the moment, we've got a total forecast of 23,000, and then that forecast difference is 2k. So 23k being the actual and committed cost, and the 2k forecast difference being the difference between the budget total and the actual and committed costs. So the first thing we can do here is, if I click here now, you can see it gives me the options: mark as complete, mark as fully committed, and use item level forecast. So the first thing I want to show you is what happens when I mark as fully committed. So let's do that. All right, so you can see now that when I've hit mark as fully committed, that forecast budget variance is showing to the client as 2,400, and for the builder $2,000. So what that's saying is that we had budgeted 25k, we've spent 11, and we're forecasting that we're going to spend another 12, and we don't forecast that we're going to spend anymore. So we're marking that as fully committed, and saying that we can now have this saving there as a variance that we can give back to the client. So it's $2,000 on the budget total and $2,400 to the client, that $400 being the markup difference on that 20% markup that they'll now receive back as a credit on the overall contract value, because that contract had 20% markup on it. So we've marked this as fully committed in order to give this saving back, in this instance, to the client. Now, if I mark this as not fully committed, it'll obviously go back to 0. And now what we can also do is we can mark as complete. So what will happen now is, if I mark this as complete, what that feature does is that ignores any committed cost, because what you're then telling the system is that you've spent 11,000. This is an actual cost, so that's set in stone. But this committed cost you haven't yet spent. This $12,000, you're planning to spend it, but you haven't yet spent it. So if I mark this as complete now, or this category as complete, you'll see the forecast budget variance on the budget is 14k, and there's 16.8 that's going to go back to the client, which again includes that 20% markup. So that's the difference between mark as fully committed versus mark as complete, because now what we're saying is that we've only spent 11, we had 25k, so there's a 14 grand saving there that can now go back to the client with the markup here to make it this 16.8. So that's just the main difference between these two features, where you can either mark as complete to ignore any committed cost, or you can mark as fully committed, which takes those committed costs, if any, into account when you're marking something off. So that's the main difference there. And now I'll also show you one more example using the item level feature, and this previously wasn't added in. So this is a new feature added into Wunderbuild, I think very recently actually, and the forecast feature was added, I think that was earlier this year. But in the previous forecast feature, all we had was mark as complete, we didn't have mark as fully committed, and we didn't have this use item level forecast either. So these are the big add-ons that have been added in for those of you who are familiar with the previous forecast cost to complete version in Wunderbuild. Alright, so what I'll do is, let me just, actually I don't need to touch this example. Let's go to this example here. Let me just close all of these off. Alright, so in this example, we'll look at the line item category adjustments. So you can see at the moment, what have I got here? Let me just have a look. All right, I'm just going to set this back to use category level forecast. Okay, let's close all these. Okay, so same project in terms of the numbers and the cost categories. And now if I expand this now, so what the item level forecast allows you to do is that it allows you to mark things off at the item level. So previously we could only mark at the category level, so here, but as soon as I click here, use item level forecast, what it will do is it will factor in the specifics, firstly in terms of overruns at the item level. So you can see here, because I've got it as set to category level, the system's not picking up this $1,000 overrun on the planning and design. So we've got a budget of 10K, an actual cost of 11. So we've gone over $1,000, and it's not showing here at the high level forecast budget variance snapshots. But if I go here and to use item level forecast, it picks that up. So it's then telling the system, for this category at least, that we've spent $1,000 more, so we're over $1,000 with that 20% markup. Gives it, puts the client over $1,200. So you can report like this, and this is really handy when you want to be able to report back to the client and show them overruns or show them savings, and then be able to report to the client like that at a very specific level. But if you want to paint a true picture of the project, well, again, we need to take everything into account. So using this same example here again, you can see that for permits and approvals, we've got a budget of 15K. We've committed 12. So at the moment, there's a $3,000 saving there, presuming we didn't have any other committed costs or actual costs which hadn't been added in. And so again, if I was to now mark this as fully committed, this would then change. So I'll do that, but before I do that, let me show you guys also this other committed cost feature, which I haven't touched on yet. So what that allows us to do is, when we're doing our forecasting, we can add in any other costs that aren't necessarily part of a purchase order, but we're still expecting to spend in order to finalize this cost line item to then be able to forecast accurately. Let's just say for this permits and approvals one here, I've got another committed cost of $500, and let's just call this road opening permits. Okay, so now what that does is that's telling the system that, again, we've got a 15K budget here for this line item. We've committed 12 as a purchase order, let's just say, and then we've got $500 as a other committed cost. So that's going to bring our total committed costs to 12.5. So now what will happen is that when I hit here as mark as fully committed, the system is going to pick up that, okay, we've got a $2,500 saving because we had a budget of 15. We're only forecasting or committing to spend 12.5. So that's going to give us a $2,500 saving. And then we've got this 1K overrun. So then that should put us 1,500 in the clear instead of 1,000 under as it's showing here. So let's do that. Okay, so that's $1,500 there, and as I'd expect to see it. So again, it's the same principle where we can either mark as complete or mark as fully committed, like I just did. And again, this is how I would report it as an overall feature, where you wouldn't want to just show the client that you're over budget, showing in red for this planning and design, where at the same time you've got here permits and approvals, which is under budget. So this is the true reflective picture of where the project's at from a forecast budget variance as it stands, based on you marking, in this instance, marking as fully committed. So that's how that works. And again, maybe I'll just do one more quick example here, where let's just say this category here, final finishing and handover. If I was to, let's see, so I can, again, if I just do markers fully or markers complete, for whatever reason, let's just say we're not going to spend any money on for this category now. What this will do is it will take this 8K and add it to this forecast budget variance. So then we'll have a $9,500 saving. So markers complete. You can see how that updates here. and then at the cost category and line item level, it also updates also. So that's the forecast cost to complete feature, how it works, and in particular how you can forecast out both at the cost category level, and then you can also drill down into an item level forecast, which is obviously handy when you want to report on individual cost line items in an estimate and not just the cost categories at a high level. And again, this is really powerful not only for the builder when you want to forecast out a job, but also to give the client the info they need when you're doing a cost plus project, where you can be very detailed and specific how you're reporting to them, and being able to report to them at that detailed level at an item level, and also from a forecasting perspective, so they can know what the true final end value of the project will be based on your forecasting, which again is more important for cost plus projects where the price or cost is unknown versus a fixed price project where you've got a fixed contract value, so the client doesn't care too much. It's really on the builder then. And again, when it's on the builder, then it becomes more important to you rather than the client, but still just equally as important as a tool to be able to understand what your final gross profit and gross profit margin will be. So I hope you found that video helpful, and it's giving you a good overview of the forecasting feature in Wunderbuild and how you can really use it to take control of your project from a financial perspective, to stay ahead of the game on every job really from a financial point of view. If you did find that video helpful, if you could like and subscribe to the channel, that'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate it, as it helps to get the video out there to more builders and to support the channel also. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to everyone. And you can also join the Wunderbuilders Facebook group if you already haven't. It's free, and you can drop your comments, questions in the group and get support from other builders in there as well. So check that out, the link's in the description. And that's all I've got for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.